Thank you for purchasing my Lewis wallet pattern. I really hope you're going to enjoy sewing along with me today. I'll run the introduction just in case you missed it, and the tutorial follows immediately afterwards. Hello bag builders, it's Diane from Spencer Ogg Sewing Patterns, and I'm here to introduce you to my new sewing pattern, the Lewis men's wallet. It's a fully lined, compact men's wallet suitable for making in cotton fabrics. It's developed to hold credit cards, notes and even change without bulk, and it's great for domestic machines. It comes with a full written pattern, full-size computer drafted pattern pieces, in-depth colour photos for every step, along with a video tutorial to walk you through making this amazing, quick and easy wallet. But I warn you, they're very addictive. You won't be able to stop at one. I wanted to make something different to the current men's wallet patterns that are on the market. Now, most wallet patterns are designed for leather, vinyl or cork, and they work well because you can have raw edges on those types of fabrics. But I've been asked so many times to develop a wallet that works for regular cottons and can be made on a domestic machine that I decided it was time to engineer something that actually works. So the number of seams required on a fabric wallet and the method of construction can easily become too bulky for a man's pocket. So to reduce the number of seams, we therefore need to reduce the number of pattern pieces, and hence this pattern's ingenious folded construction was born. So this is the Lewis wallet. A great slimline shape that won't make huge pocket bulges anywhere. It has 3 slots which hold numerous credit cards and cash. It's fully lined and fastens with plastic snap fasteners, but I also give full written directions for Velcro hook and loop tape too. Or you could use metal snap fasteners if you prefer. They all work a treat. The finished dimensions are 12 by 8.5 centimetres, and that's 4 3/4 by 3 1/4 inches, but it still holds a surprising amount. So it's a very flexible little wallet. It'll hold plenty of credit cards and cash, so I can fit plenty of cards into each of those 3 slots. It doesn't just hold one. Room for lots more. I've developed it so that it'll take notes from just about any currency. Just fold those in half and they slot nicely into the back pocket. You can add change into there as well, and because that's folded directly, the flap's folded directly on top of the top pocket, that holds your change securely and it can't fall out anywhere. So all in all, a very useful men's wallet. The skill level is gratifyingly easy, and it'll probably take you less than 2 hours from choosing your fabric to a fabulously finished item. We can have some real fun with the outer fabrics here too. I've developed this pattern specifically to work with light to medium weight fabrics such as quilt cottons, Ankara, Essex linen, lightweight denims, lightweight canvas, cordura, oilskin, wax canvas. The list is endless, but have some fun with it. Grab an old pair of khakis. It's great for recycling, or a Batman print shirt that's hanging around in the wardrobe. It's such a small piece that you actually need for it. The wallet works well in lots of different fabrics, so why not try something completely different from your stash? Have a rummage around. Each one gives a totally different look. It's great for gifts for kids too, particularly with the Velcro fastening version. I've even started using one myself for quick trips to the shops. I made that one in pink, of course. My amazing testers went wild with this one. None of them can stop at just making one. Take a look at some of these amazing creations they came up with. all the tools are available to help you make a fantastic wallet. Printable pattern pieces, full written instructions, a video tutorial, and I also have a bag making Facebook board for daily help and support with all my patterns. And you're very welcome to join. I'll add the link in the text below the video. The pattern is available for purchase now, again on the link below in the text or on my website. It's instant download and prints onto US letter size paper or A4 paper. I'd love to see your creations. Please share on Instagram using hashtag #SpencerOg, and find more of my patterns and bag making hardware at my website www.spencerog.com. And of course, for free bag making tutorials, do subscribe to my YouTube channel here. So what are you waiting for? Download the Lewis wallet sewing pattern now and go sew. So now you've seen the wallet, let's make a start with the tutorial. So the things we're going to need for this project, it's not a huge amount of components. We're going to need an outer fabric for piece A, a fusible interfacing for piece B, and there's an optional piece C in ultra firm interfacing, which you can decide upon nearer the end. We'll talk about those choices in a moment. You'll also need some plastic snaps or KAM snaps, regular length prong or long prong, depending on the thickness of your fabric. Again, we'll talk about that as we go through. And you'll need some all-purpose thread, contrast or to match, whichever you choose. And I use 100% polyester thread as it's stronger than cotton. For example, Gutterman Sew-All. So moving on to suitable fabrics for your outer. We can have some real fun with our outer fabrics here. So the main body piece A is cut in just one long tall strip to keep the seams to an absolute minimum. And I've developed the pattern specifically to work with light to medium weight fabrics, such as quilt cottons and Ankara, Essex linen, lightweight canvas, lightweight denim, cordura, even heavyweight corduras, waxed canvas, oilskin. They all work really well. Avoid using thick wool tweeds, corks or vinyls, as they are just too bulky for this project. But have some fun with it. Grab an old pair of khakis or a check or a superhero print shirt. It's such a small piece, he might not even notice a hole in the back of his favourite shirt. Of course, I didn't tell you to do that. So moving on to our fusible interface in piece B. We need to match our interfacing to the fabric we use, and I've added a chart to the instructions with lots of examples, but just to give you an idea, if you're using one of the medium to heavyweight fabrics such as the cordura, oilskin, wax canvas, you're not going to need that piece B. You don't need any interface in there at all. If you're using the medium weights such as canvas or denim, then use a lightweight interfacing. So see the type of interfacing I'm using there. Something like a Violin F220, a G700, a Pellon SF101, woven fuse, cotton weight. Something that's going to give it a little bit of stabilisation but not much extra bulk. Moving on to the lighter weight fabrics, if you're using quilt cottons and Ankaras, things like that, then you're going to need a slightly firmer interfacing. So I found one thing that works particularly well for this is Decovil Light. So that's the light, not the Decovil Heavy, and that gives a really nice robust wallet. I'm going to be using Violin F250 today, which is a firm, non-woven, fusible interfacing. And a lightweight Buckram also works really well for this. I've been using a Crackers Fabrics one in some of my latest projects, and that seems to work really well. As I say, just check the interfacing chart I've given in the instructions and match your interfacing piece B to your outer fabric. Just a note here, don't use fleece, wadding or foam in this project. They're just too bulky. That's going to give it bulk, and we just want firmness rather than any extra bulk. Finally is our option for piece C. Now piece C is an optional piece, and you don't need to decide right until the very end whether you want to use it. So you can cut that later on. I've used Decovil Heavy for that, but you could also use Pellon Peltex F71. So print your paper pattern pieces off and let's get started. If you do need any help with opening and printing PDF patterns, I've got a video to help on my YouTube channel, so I'll put a link in the text below the video here. You'll also find it in the pattern itself. There's just a printed pattern piece for piece A. Piece B and C are both small rectangles to cut with, just with a rule. So piece A prints across 4 sheets of paper. You just cut those pieces out and tape them together, A1, A2, A3 and A4, and all the directions are given on the paper pattern piece itself and the lines to join it at. Once you've joined it together, completely ignore the lines afterwards where you've joined it. They don't count for anything, they're just joining lines, so pretend they're not there once you've taped it together. You'll also find a greyed out block on the pattern piece. Now that's near the bottom, but that's actually what will end up as your flap. So that is there just to help if you are looking to fussy cut a print or to put a motif on your front flap of the wallet, or initials, anything like that. And if you're using a directional print, it should look the same way around as the writing on the pattern. Right, so if we've got everything cut, let's make a start. This wallet is a super quick make, and I think once you've made one and you know how the folding goes, you're likely to make a lot very quickly afterwards. So cut out your fabrics and your interfacings and let's make a start. So I'm going to use just a regular quilting cotton today. And following the instructions in the interfacing chart, I'm going to use a firm weight interfacing with that for my piece B. So my piece B interfacing, I've already cut and I've fused it to the back of my quilt cotton. And you'll see there's a border all the way around. It's smaller than the full size of the main body piece A because we don't want it in any of the seams. So it's 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch smaller all the way around. So you're going to fuse that just centrally so you've got that border all the way around. And that's not just for domestic machines, that's for domestic and for industrial machines, because it keeps the bulk down a lot. You don't want the extra interfacing going inside the wallet as well, as it's just going to create too much bulk in such a small item. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the credit card pockets. So flip your fabric, your fused and interfaced fabric, to the right side and grab your paper pattern piece and lay it back on top and pin it exactly onto your fabric. Make sure it's lined up exactly because we want to add our markings now for our credit card pocket folding. So pin it back in place. So I've pinned my pattern piece back on. We're going to add a notch or a snip within the seam allowance, i.e. less than the seam allowance, because we don't want it to encroach onto the main body of the wallet. It's just to help us fold these credit card pockets into a perfect alignment. So we're going to make a snip or a notch at A, B, C, D, E and F. So you can see the five lines on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines on there. A, B, C, D, E and F. So as we said before, ignore those lines where you join the pattern pieces together. Those were literally just for your paper. So I'm going to make a snip at each of those. A, B, C, D, E and F. Swing it round and we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So ignore that join line. A, B, C, D, E and F. So we're going to head to the ironing board and lay our fabric with the right side uppermost. But I'm going to just show you this and just demonstrate it on the paper pattern piece itself to start with before we do it on the fabric, just so it's really clear. Let me grab a board to show you better on. I'm hoping you can see it better on the green board. So let's demonstrate on the paper pattern piece first before we go to the ironing board. You don't need to do it, it's just so I can show you clearly what's happening. So I'll remove my fabric for now. I'm going to take it to the ironing board with the right side uppermost. I'm going to fold along line A. So you've got your notches on both sides, so you can see exactly and clearly that that's a lovely straight line across the fabric. And you're going to pinch that up and lay it on top of line B. And press that into place. Okay, so that's line B, you can just see underneath. And line A is lying directly, I can't say it. Line A is lying directly on top of line B now. And then we're going to fold along line C. So you're pinching that upwards. And lift it up and lay it onto line D. So you can see what's happening there. We're creating the credit card slots. So we're then going to do the same again. Fold along line E. From snip to snip or notch to notch, and fold that up and place it on line F. So there we go. You've got your 3 credit card slots there, and because of those notches, they're perfectly aligned and in the right place. So we're going to do the same with the fabric now. So that's on the paper pattern piece. So let's work on the fabric itself. Obviously, as I say, you don't need to do it on the paper. It's just because it's so much clearer on there with it being white. So let me grab my fabric. And it helps to have this paper pattern piece with you at the ironing board anyway, even though you've notched your fabric. So I've pre-folded this just to make it easier for you to see. So at my first notches at A here, I'll lie them that way first so you can see. So I've got my notches there, A, B, C, D, E and F, just as per the paper pattern piece. So we always start from the bottom first, always start from line A. Let me turn it that way so it's clearer. So line A, I'm going to pinch up at line A and I'm going to lay it on top of line B. So that's our line B on the paper pattern piece. Pinch up at line C and lay on top of line D. And pinch up at line E and lay on top of line F. So you can see that's our credit card slots completed. And I'm hoping you can see the chalk lines on there that I just drew. I think it's clearer on the paper pattern piece. You can see, if you follow it on there, you can always practice on the paper pattern piece first because it is easier on there. A to B, C to D, E to F. And then we're going to pin or clip that at the sides to secure it. Oop. Make sure everything is totally falling in line here. Front and back, we want it all in one long line. We don't want credit card slots off to the side. And make sure that that section at the top is completely equal. Make sure that credit card slot at the top is sitting directly where it should and it's not askew anywhere. And we're set, we're ready to start sewing. So I've switched my machine on. I've just got a size 14 regular needle in here. I've got my stitch length set at 3 for top stitching. It's often nicer to do a longer stitch length for top stitching than when you're sewing seams, a bit more decorative. And the first operation is to top stitch the top of my credit card slots. So you can just do it freehand, but if you struggle with getting a straight line for top stitching, I always endorse using either a guide foot or I use my blind hemming foot. I'm trying to get focus on that for you. So you just set your needle, it will actually be going that way. So you'd set your needle just to the left hand side and there's a little bar in there that guides the fabric through. But do have a look, they usually come with your machine, but always great for nice neat top stitching. So I've got one of those on my machine already. I use them all the time, don't be shy. So top stitch our 3 edges. So I'll just take those clips off for the moment. So I'll start with the first, so just hold back the rest of the fabric and top stitch along that top fold. So back stitch beginning and end. Trim each one, trim a T-trim, trim, you know me, I like to trim at every opportunity because there's nothing worse than having a million thread ends at the end. So that's my first credit card slot, top stitched. Got my other 2 to do, so I'll move on to my next one. Just fold it back into position if you're struggling to ascertain which one is the top edge or not. So you can see I've got my other 2 there. So next one, just fold the rest of the fabric back out of the way and top stitch that. I'm trying to keep my head out of the way of the camera at the same time. Trim. And my third slot edge. And trim up. And fold that back into position. Now I'm going to clip that back into place here. So I'm going to use plastic snap fasteners to close my wallet, but I've given an option at the end of the pattern to use Velcro as a closure method as well. So if you would prefer to use Velcro, then refer to the end of the pattern now, because you're going to have to apply it at this point, but those are in the written instructions. Today I'm using the plastic snaps. They're definitely my preferred method of closure. The backs don't impede the insertion of your credit cards, and the position is easy and it's accurate, and you can add metal snaps at the end too in the same way. So my next operation is just to baste along the 2 sides here within the seam allowance of the credit card slots, just to hold them in place. So I'm going to stitch both sides just along that credit card section, just so they don't move as I'm making the wallet up. So there we are, fixed in place. So at this point you can decide whether you want to add a logo tab or not. So I'm going to add a woven label to mine, but it could be a leather label, anything you choose. And the positioning is 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches below that bottom credit card pocket. So have your panel right side up, the credit card pockets opening towards the top. We want to measure down 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches. And put the label upside down centrally at that point. Check. Yeah, to make sure that's straight. And now I'm going to take that to the machine. I've put a little bit of sticky tape on the back of there just to hold it in place for the moment. I'm going to zigzag attach it with a zigzag stitch in this case. You may want to use lock stitch, it's just personal preference. So I've changed my machine to a zigzag stitch already, and I'll just go around all 4 sides. Move that forward a bit so you're not looking at the top of my head. It's difficult, I'm filming overhead for this one because I wanted to show you the folding method clearer. There we go, so that's my label applied using a zigzag stitch. And yes, it's upside down because the wallet folds back. So that's the back. When it turns over, it will be the right way around. So just remember to keep that upside down when you're applying it. Next, I'm going to fold my wallet into position. So flip it over. So your credit card pockets are still opening towards the top. Flip it over and you can see the bottom of the credit card slots there. There's just one fold on the back. So grab a ruler and draw a line in disappearing pen or chalk 3mm or 1/8 of an inch below that fold. I'm going to turn mine upside down to do it, it's kind of easier. You can see that just sitting below the fold now. There's the fold, and there's my chalk line just sitting 3/8 of an inch below it. And I'm going to fold the wallet along this line, bringing the two right sides of the fabric together. Make sure your edges line up beautifully and clip that in place. So we're wrong sides showing on both sides, but at the top here you can see a small section of the right side of the fabric, and that's what we're going to work on next. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to draw two lines onto that. I'm going to draw one 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch down, and one 5 centimeters or 2 inches down from that top short edge. You can notch if you prefer, like you did with the folding lines for the credit card slots. 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch, and another at 5 centimeters or 2 inches, and that should be just above the top of the other side. There we go, there's my two lines. So I'm taking this unit to the ironing board. I'm going to press along that top line with the fabric wrong sides together back on itself, so that's going to be behind. And then on the next line down I'm going to fold it back over to hide, disguise that raw edge underneath of the other side. So I'll press that in place and I'll come back and show you. So I've pressed that at the ironing board. You can see I have my concertina edge now sat on the top. If I open it up, you can see what I've done. My raw edge is underneath there, and those folds fold down nicely to disguise that. I know it's a little bit like origami. It's fabric origami. It's a bit of fun. Now the last thing we want to do here is we want this little concertina edge, this folded edge, to sit underneath the raw edge of the other end, i.e. that raw edge underneath. So just flip the raw unfolded edge out from underneath so it now lies on top. So I'll show you on the side. That concertina folded edge is now inside, and the raw edge from underneath is sat on the top. And let's clip that in place. That's all the folding over, and it's easy peasy from here on in. So we're going to stitch both side seams now with a 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Down both sides, leaving the shorter edges top and bottom open. Well, they're not open, are they? They're folded, but you know what I mean, just the side seams. A tip here is to draw the seam lines on before you sew. I've got a tendency, having made quite a lot of these, to take less of a seam allowance as I sew over the last credit card slot, strangely. So the seam ends up bowed outwards at that spot, and then when you turn it through, your wallet will stick out at those spots. So it's worth drawing it on, especially if your interfacing isn't dead straight or it's not really exact on the seam line. If it is, it's fine, you can follow that, but otherwise draw that seam on. So I've switched my machine back to about 2.8 stitch length. Back stitch beginning and end. That's one, let's do the other. Let's trim that up as ever. I don't know why I bother trimming these side bits really, because we're going to be taking those seam allowances down any second. But there we go. So that's our panel completed with the side seams. And now I'm going to trim back those seams to half and clip the corners. Be brave. There we go, and we're ready to turn that through. How easy is that so far? So just slip your hand into that open edge, bypassing the concertina, and we want to turn it through so that the credit card pockets sit on the front. Don't put your hand inside the back credit card pocket. You want it at the front. Can I see them? There they are. You can feel them easier. Right, so turn it through. It's easy to turn through. Just use your fingers if you can. Yeah, or a blunt instrument. You can use a little pokey tool. Make sure it is very blunt though. We don't want anything sharp in there. No scissors, you naughty people. You know what will happen before you do it. So leave the top edge folded back as it is. We're just leaving that edge open at the moment. And take that to the ironing board and give that a really good press. Now I've said that, I think it's time for a break actually. I'll press it afterwards. Oh, it's definitely time for a break now. I always know when it's time for a break because I've got a little helper down here who always reminds me. Come here then. Go on in. What do you want? What do you want? Because it's his break time too, isn't it? You get the right one, there's a mine, there's yours there. Go on in. Go on in. That's for you. So I'll get mine in peace now. I'm on the Scottish shortbreads today, and very nice they are too. So I think I had too much of a break there because the light's actually going down, so I've had to put my lights on. So if it looks a bit different, sorry about that. So hopefully you considered while you were having your nice cup of tea whether your wallet was firm enough. So fold it over, see what you think. I quite like it as it is. It really depends on what you've used for piece B as to how firm that's going to be. So you have an option here to insert a piece of ultra firm stabilizer. So I've used Decovil, which is brilliant for this. F71, the Peltex is great too. So all we need to do if we want that extra firmness is to insert it with the fusible side towards the outer into our open edge. And you're just going to slot that right down. You may have to trim it down a little. I've given you the sizes, but obviously it depends on what seam allowances you took. So if you need to trim an extra 1/4 of an inch off, that's fine. Do bear in mind that if you use the extra stabilizer, you'll probably need a long prong plastic snap because of the extra thickness. If you don't have long prongs, I can't say it, long prongs, you can snip a little bit extra out of the Decovil at the top as well, which will enable you to still use regular length prong plastic snaps. So I'm not going to add it to this one. I'm quite happy with how it is. It's just if you want an extra firm wallet, or I did use it on my oilskin version because I wasn't using any interfacing for piece B. I felt that it could do with a little bit of firmness adding just at the end, so I did add Decovil to that and to the Cordura versions I made as well. But on these quilt weight, if you use a firm enough interfacing, it's not really necessary. But see how you feel. It's, you know, it's personal choice. So it's now time for us to deal with that top edge. Flip your panel over so that the credit card pockets are facing downwards. Your concertina edge is still at the top there. And that's just like you'd see on a pillowcase or a pillow sham. It means you can turn it through and it encloses any raw edges. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm just going to stick my thumbs in there and turn it through. You have to get your little pointy tool on it again, or not too pointy tool, shall we call it. Try and get a nice corner on it without poking it too hard. I'm guilty of it as well, we all do it, don't we? Okay, so you can see how that's folded over now to enclose completely that raw edge underneath. And you can give that a last press just to make sure that's nice and flat. I'm just going to go right ahead here because it's not looking too bad. Fold it over, make sure everything's folding in line with each other. Got a nice shape on that. So now I'm going to close the edge there. So I'm going to stitch a line of stitching right along that open fold, that edge that's still open, just to secure it down. 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from that edge. Now I switch my machine up to a 3 stitch length for top stitching again, and I've got my blind hemming foot on there again to help me. I'm going to stitch from this side so I can see it, but I want to keep my stitches nice and neat on that side. So just as an aside, often find that you get a big nest build up of threads there often on the back. So if you want to avoid that, just keep a longer thread tail on your machine and hold it while you set off, and that will stop you getting any build up of thread nests. Thread nests, is that a real thing? Right, here we go. So hold that. I'm going to do a back stitch, a small, just 1 or 2 back stitches just to secure it. And then the same at this end, rather than cutting it off with your machine, just take the needle out, press a foot up and pull it out to the side. Trim. And then I'll trim that with my scissors. Just pull those tight and trim with your scissors, and that should avoid any thread nests on the other side. Yep. So you can see that's worked quite nicely. And then we want to stitch around the remaining 3 sides of the flap. Now you can see it very clearly from this side, from the inside of the wallet, but I actually like to stitch from the other side just to make sure everything's staying neat. So we want to stitch from the top of the credit card pockets to the top of the credit card pockets on that side. So flip it over. You can actually put a little chalk mark or something on there just to remind you where those credit card pockets start and finish, just so you don't go too far. And then I'd do the same thing again here. We're stitching around that flap, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Start at your chalk marks, end at your chalk marks, and again I'm going to hold my thread tails out of the way to avoid those nasty nests. Raise your presser foot and pull it out again. Pull them tight, trim. There we go. Beautiful. So I'm going to take that back to the ironing board and I'm going to fold my flap down into position and press it into place. Now bear in mind you want to fold it directly on top of that top credit card slot, because you're going to use that for coins and notes. You don't want anything to fall out, and if we fold it directly on there then there's no need for a zip. That's why we don't need one in this project, because there's just literally no room for coins to fall out of the side. So I'll go and give that a press. Time to add our plastic fasteners. So we're using KAM Snaps or plastic snaps today. Do remember that if you're using Velcro, nip to the end of the pattern because it's a different attachment method. I don't want you poking holes in the front of your flap if you're adding Velcro to it. So just check at the end of the pattern first. If you haven't used plastic snaps before, I've got a YouTube instructional video to help, and I'll add a link in below. They're really easy to use and they're really economical, and I'm finding them more and more useful in all my little projects. Just a tip here, if you're using heavier weight fabrics or you've added the extra stabiliser, the Decovil, then you may need to use a plastic snap fastener with a longer prong. So we'll just try it as we go. So the first thing we're going to do is add the positioning for the top fasteners on the inside of the flap. So I'm going to use male snap fasteners on the flap and females on the body itself. And that's usually the way you would add it, but it doesn't really make much difference with these. So there's my males. I'm going to grab 2 caps. And I want the position to be within this oblong that I've stitched here, this profile stitched oblong. I want it to be central across there and 3/4 of an and 3/4 of an inch in, or 2 centimeters in from the side. So grab my ruler. So I'm going to be central here, which is about there, and I want to make a mark 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch in, which is there. Yes, I'm using a pen today. Use chalk or a disappearing pen. It's just hopefully so that you can see that. 3/4 of an inch in from the side, and it's centrally within that top band. I'm going to make a mark on the other side too in the same place. Make sure it's central, lining up with the other one. There. Okay, just eyeball it, make sure you're happy and it looks right. And then we're ready to poke a couple of holes in there. So grab a bradawl, or an actual pointy tool this time, never to be used for poking out corners, of course. So I'll just poke my first hole there with the bradawl. And the second. And then I'm going to grab my regular length prong snap fasteners. I'm just going to poke this through. If you just use quilting cotton and an SF101, you'll be fine with regular length. It's really just if you've added that extra thickener, that extra stabilizer. So I've poked that through, and you can see, hopefully, that that prong is sticking through sufficiently. We need to get a grasp on it with the male side of my popper. So I'm going to push the other prong, I'm going to push the other side through too. I'm not going to attach the male part of this just yet because I'm going to use those prongs to position the female halves underneath. So fold your wallet down, and so we can get an exact positioning, so this lines up right every single time. Just push them down, not too firmly, you don't want to go all the way through. Just push those prongs down so you can see the indents underneath. So we're just pushing them into that fabric so you can see, hopefully, where the indents have fallen underneath. So I'll just make a mark there, my naughty pen again. There we go. There. So I'm going to push my bradawl through. Put your fingers into the purse because, sorry, the wallet, because you don't want it going through to the next credit card section. Just that front one. There we go, in through there. And the same on the second side. It's a bit fiddlier to get the backs on these, but you'll manage it. We're keeping those caps wide, by the way, widely spaced, to avoid the wallet curling in use. If you put them nearer to the centre, or just put one in the centre, these edges might curl up in use later on, so that's why they're widely spaced. So I'm going to add the caps and the female parts to this credit card slot. So open it up. It's actually easiest to kind of fold the wallet open a little bit like this. You're almost folding it the other way, and then I can get my hand in to position that cap and see the hole. So I'll get the right ones, the female side on here. I'm forever putting them on the wrong way. but it isn't. It's no big deal as long as you've got the opposite one on the flap. So get your squeaky tool, not a squeaky tool, my pliers in, squeeze. That's your female side applied. Same with the other. Let's put the cap into that side, open it out so you can see it. Get your fingers in. Through. Female side. Keep it positioned there while you get your pliers in. Squeeze. There we go, so that's our females applied. So now we can go back to the male half. So that's easy now, just drop that on. You've already got your positioning, you've already got your caps in. There we go, there's one. And the second. Little squeeze. There we go. I would go and give that a nice press again, but then you're ready to add all your credit cards. Make sure your studs are working. Yes, that's fine. And now I'm going to give that a final press and load it up with my credit cards and my cash. So my wallet's beautifully pressed. I'm ready to load it up. I'm putting some change in there, some notes. Bear in mind that's the size of UK and US notes. They're very similar. They certainly both fit, and most currencies that I know of, any currencies I know of, will fit in there, folded in half. It's got room for plenty of credit cards. They don't just hold one credit card, they'll hold plenty of cards in those slots. Fasten it up and it's ready to slip into your back pocket or your bag or anything you like. So I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial. I hope it was easy to understand and you followed along easily enough. Do remember, if you've got any questions, just join my Facebook sewing group and ask away. There's always help and lots of direction on there with anything you like, and post your pictures. You know I want to see what you've made. And do subscribe to my YouTube channel while you're on here. There's lots of free tutorials all the time. And if you've only made one, why? They're so quick and easy. Get some more fabrics out of your stash, get some different interfacings. Even try making ones for ladies or kids. They're really, really versatile. So what are you waiting for? Let's go sew!